Meet the Be Quiet P-Rock Pro 3LX CPU air cooler. Special thanks to Be Quiet for sponsoring today's video, but as always, any opinion expressed is strictly our own. That being said, if you're interested in this CPU cooler or you want to find out more about it, the link to it will be in the video description. Take a look at the retail box and packaging right here, walking you through key tech specs right there on the side of the packaging, and you can learn more about Be Quiet. Now let's go ahead, let's open it up and see what's inside. Here are all the contents. First up, we have our product literature with a user guide and manual walking us through full installation and setup for both Intel and AMD sockets, as well as a list of all the included parts and components. So take a look at the initial setup instructions for your Intel sockets. It supports the latest and greatest 1851 and 1700 socket from Intel. And those instructions continue on the back. And then we have our AMD setup instructions here. It supports the latest and greatest AM4 and AM5 socket from AMD. So very detailed and thorough. Next, you'll find we have our fan clips for spacers, your Intel kit, your AMD kit. Here's a look at the included fans. There's two of them. They're 120 millimeter ARGB fans. Specifically, they're the Lightwings LX 120 millimeter ARGB fans, but very satisfying to spin that. We can see the back side of the fan right there too. And our connectors. We have a nice adapter for a splitter and your ARGB and PWM connection options there. So two of those fans, one already comes pre-installed. The second one will use those clips to install it in the cooler. And take a look at the cooler itself. Very nice design. Get a feel for how thick it is. See the top down with Be Quiet's logo and branding. We have our fan airflow directional arrows built into the fan itself on both sides there. And then the Be Quiet branding. Take a look at the bottom side. We have pre-installed thermal compound and solution all ready to go. We have all of our heat pipes. Now let's go ahead and get it installed. The CPU we're going to be using in our test bench today is the Intel i9-13900K. So we grab the Intel kit here, and you follow a similar procedure for both Intel and AMD, but they are a little bit different. But the first thing we have to do is build our mounting back plate. So we have ours assembled right here for the LGA 1700 socket, which is what the CPU is. It's also configured for the 1851 socket from Intel, which is the latest and greatest, but it's very easy to configure this. What you do on the back is figure out if you're 1 or 2. So 1700 and 1851 is going to be in the 1 position. And if you look on here, it's clearly labeled 1 and 2. So 1 and 2, and then on the side we have this little lip or tooth in the bracket itself that then we line up our metal piece here in the 1 or 2 position. And then this side you take the little rubber washer and put it down and repeat that all 4 times. So clearly labeled. Next step is to go ahead and put this through the back side of our motherboard. We have 4 holes right here where this will line up. So it should look just like this, where we have all 4 poking out and through. Now it's time for the next step, where we're going to take these guys, which are clearly labeled in the up position, and we're going to put them through each one of the metal pieces sticking up. So it should look just like this. Now we can take our bracket piece, and we're going to line this up. And we have a CPU and a little arrow there. It'll be in the 1 or 2 position to match everything else. So in our case, it's the 1 position again. And then lastly, we take this little guy, and now we'll screw the bracket down in place. Now at this stage, we're ready to place our CPU cooler, and we'll tighten down the last screws on the cooler right here with those 2 threads. On our cooler, we can go ahead and pop off the plastic protective cover, and we're just gonna line it up just like so. And gently, it'll rest in place right here, and we'll tighten down those 2 screws. Both screws are tightened in place. Now we can add our fans. Depending on your RAM, you might be able to position yours a little bit differently, but for our first one right here, we have it above our RAM. And for the second one, we're gonna put it right down here in the middle, right about there. And then we just gently snap those clips in place on both sides. Pay attention to the airflow indicator there, making sure you have it the right way. So our air is coming in here, right, and passing through the cooler, and then it'll be exhausting out the back. So just make sure the arrows are how you want them and position the fans accordingly depending on your RAM or anything else with your particular case and build. All right, take a look at everything plugged in and powered on. Beautiful RGB here. We can see it peeking through the cooler too for our second fan. Take a look at how we have everything connected right here. RGB to their RGB header here, and they have your adapter so you can connect both to the same cable, which is great. Same for the CPU fan header. We have both fans connected together right there. So just one cable for each of those with the adapter included on one of the fans, which is really nice. And currently everything's at idle. Listen in to get a feel for how quiet this fan is. You can't even hear it. It's whisper quiet. And here's a look with the lights off so we can really appreciate the RGB on here. There's the light leaking through. It looks really nice. Show you it through the cooler itself. I like it. Good glow. Now listen in with our fans maxed out at 100%. Not bad at all for the amount of air that we're pushing through here with two fans. We're left with one question. How does this particular cooler stack up against the competition? So the lens that we're going to look at everything through is going to be the lens of cost. This will help us make sense of all the data that we're about to look at to see how it stacks up compared to the average cooler that we've personally tested. So good news here, this is below average by about 18%. So with that being said, should we see about 18% decline in performance? Well, let's go ahead and find out. First up, we're looking at max TDP. This is in watts. This has a 250 watt rating, whereas the average is 253 watts. What does that mean to you? Well, we get this question all the time. Will this work with my CPU? You fill in the blank there. So from this list, feel free to take a look and see if you can find your CPU and where it stacks up to know if this is going to be the right cooler for your setup and build. We have both some of the latest and greatest from Intel and AMD for you to take a look at. Moving right along, let's talk about heat pipes. This has 6 heat pipes in its design. The average is a little bit less, coming in at 5.4. So it's great to see that even though we're paying less, we're not getting anything less hardware-wise. We're actually getting a little bit more. And moving along to temps, everything was done in our test bench with an Intel 13900K CPU to test. So first up, idle temps coming in at 32 degrees Celsius, just a couple degrees above average, but that's not going to be 18%. And spoiler alert, we'll see a similar theme all throughout our testing here. Looking at 65 watts, our average was 43 degrees, so 3 degrees above average. At 95 watts, same thing, 49 versus 46, so that's going to be another 3 degrees above average. At 120 watts, well, you guessed it, 3 degrees above average. At 170, a little bit more separation here, 67 degrees Celsius versus 62, so now we're 5 degrees above average, getting a little bit warmer. And then looking at it maxed out, it does hit that 100 degrees Celsius stopping point built into our Intel CPU, whereas in our testing, some only get up to 97, which is rather impressive. And looking at our max wattage in this test, 312 watts versus the average of 318, so 6 watts less. Max speed comes in right at average, so we're getting the same 5.2 gigahertz. Looking at idle noise, this is measured in decibels. We come in at 35 decibels compared to the average of 36, so we're 1 decibel quieter, which is great to see because after all, this is Be Quiet. I mean, their specialty is in their name. And that holds up true in our max noise test as well, with the fans going at 100%. We're at 60 decibels versus 61. So overall, the Be Quiet PureRock Pro 3LX lives up to its name. It's a quiet, reliable cooler for your CPU, packed with 220mm RGB fans that give a nice look and aesthetic to your build. So simple and straightforward to install, it runs quiet, and it cools your CPU. And it's cheaper than the average CPU cooler, so what more can you ask for?